Hi, I'm Jason.
And I'm Ashley.
And welcome to Crisis Club. And we usually do better intros than that, but I don't know what happened, Ashley.
I got thrown off by the fact that we didn't say our last name. I was lost and confused.
You're a professional. Well, if you
world.
don't know, this is the series where we usually say our last name, but we talk issue by issue of Crisis on Infinite Earths because DC worlds lived, DC worlds died, and here's every single villain ever.
Truly.
Waldo, too. If you haven't read this issue, issue 9, there will be spoilers, so go read it, damn it. All right.
Read it because it's amazing.
Yeah, it's really good. Issue 9 of Crisis on Infinite Earths is called Warzone. It's written and edited by Marv Wolfman, penciled by George Perez, with inks by the amazing Jerry Ordway, lettered by John Costanza, colored by Anthony Tollin, and it was published in December of 1985. I had October of 1985.
That's okay. I mean, we make notes and we do our best, and
It's
that's
December of 1985. Let's talk about the cover, Ashley. You've talked about this cover.
Never.
I mean, literally before we turn on the camera.
Oh,
so,
sure, but I
just
mean, yeah.
it's a cavalcade of villains.
Yeah, there sure is a swastika right front and center.
Can you name every one of them?
Absolutely not, but let me try.
Oh, dear God.
Don't know who this guy is.
Start in the bottom right, and then
That's
the bottom right, Ashley.
I don't know who that is.
the snaky guy.
That's Cheetah.
Yep.
The guy from Shazam.
It's Dr. Savannah.
That's a ape.
Yep.
Deathstroke.
Mm-hmm.
Luther.
Yep.
Sinestro.
Yep.
The Joker.
Yep.
Don't know who that is.
Pretty certain. Yep.
Captain Cold.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know who that is.
That's
Don't
Eclipso.
know who that is. Don't know who that is. Solomon Grundy. Poison Ivy.
Good luck editing this, Adam.
Don't know who that is. Don't know who that is. Daredevil, Clock King.
That's not Daredevil. That's like D-Man or whatever.
Daredevil, Clock King. Don't know who that is. Don't know who that is. Don't know who that is.
The thing is, I can't see who half the people.
Don't know who that is. Don't know who the Nazi
Captain Nazi.
is. Don't know who that is. Don't know who that is.
All right, I think we're good.
ape.
This is compelling video. I'm gonna tell you.
I told you I don't know most. Villains are, I've said this on the podcast, I've said this on a lot of videos. Villains are not my jam.
Yep.
I think there are versions of villain stories, villainous characters that are very compelling. DC TV has done a really excellent job at even redeeming some of their villains.
You know, most of these villains, the problems are that most of them are in their 1980s designs.
Yes, that's
So.
also a thing, and I'm not on the up and up.
All right.
Look, more blue people.
Page 1, we're talking about Guy Gardner and the Guardians of the Universe. Now, Guy Gardner actually was supposed to be the first Green Lantern of Earth, but he was farther away from the dying Abin Sur than Hal Jordan was, so Hal Jordan was brought there first. Fun fact we didn't know. At this point, this is not Guy Gardner's first appearance. Guy Gardner had been a Green Lantern, but then he'd been thrown into a coma, and this is his...
He was in a soap opera briefly.
This was his reawakening from the coma. Now, interestingly enough, these pages had to be redrawn.
Oh, really?
Originally, in this page, right before print, they had to redraw this page. He was in the Hal Jordan costume, the little
not
unitard.
in the vesty vest?
And then they gave him the vesty vest because the Green Lantern editors wanted to make him more unique.
I like the vesty vest design, actually. I also love this last panel of Guy with the ring. I think it's a really, really well-drawn panel. I think it's really stunning. Can't wait for Nick Mundy to play Guy Gardner in something.
Oh, dear God. All right, so let's talk about all the villains on Brainiac's ship. Ashley, let's talk about this.
Right.
Again, this is Robot Brainiac.
I just want to say, I love that they included Starro. I stand Starro.
And Chemo.
Starro is the OG Justice League villain. So every time he shows up, I think it's great. And Killer Frost is finally back with the villains, where she, particularly for this era, belongs. She's not mooning over Firestorm anymore.
That's right.
What's interesting about this sequence, I think, is I love Robot Brainiac. Robot Brainiac's ship is really, really scary. And
This is where the Robot Brainiac ship comes from.
I know.
This period.
I know.
Yeah. You're welcome, Krypton.
And then it got stolen by it's a great design, which is why everyone else kind of obfuscates with it. I love that we're actually seeing classic Luthor because
Super Friends Luthor, the power armor.
the green armor Luthor is always great. Patrick Zurcher does a really great version of it in modern comics.
They introduced it in Supergirl last season.
Great.
Or when he showed up, he's in the power armor.
John Cryer?
John Cryer CGI's into the power armor.
I gotta look at some pictures
Yeah,
of
yeah,
that.
yeah.
But what I like is I like the return to classic Luthor here because we've been hanging out with Alexander Luthor for such a long time. So we as the reader have been challenged to be like, oh, maybe I'll rethink my position on Luthor. And then it's like, no, don't worry.
And
he's still a bad
There's
guy.
another Luthor in this issue, the Luthor that mouths off and is killed by Brainiac. Do you know who that is?
He got hair. No.
That's Alexei Luthor of Earth 2.
Is he Russian?
A little bit.
Alexei?
A little bit.
A little Russian?
Little
Cool.
bit. A little bit. Okay, so there's something I want to talk about. There's this whole subplot with Starfire going to get married, but that's not the thing I want to talk about. The thing I want to talk about is this gentleman in the middle of Metropolis trying to sell an issue called The Warp Zone, and talking about living with your cave zone neighbors, because if you remember, there's only 5 Earths left, and they're starting to meld, like all the time periods are melding. So there are dinosaurs in Metropolis, there are cavemen, there are Romans, there are cowboys.
We saw that very early when we saw the first boy and the Legion, and they encountered each other.
Now it's going crazy, and people are reporting on it, because again, there's a little bit in this issue, we talked about this last issue, people think the crisis is over.
Yes.
Like, people think that that we beat the Anti-Monitor and that this might be the new normal.
Yeah, I love this sequence because we get to like feature the Teen Titans, even though they're not a huge dramatic part of the storyline.
Yeah, Cyborg does a weird jump that looks like Spider-Man on this page.
Yeah,
it's weird.
Donna's in it for like no reason except she's cool.
Ashley, I want to ask you, when we get to the reporters reporting and they're asking people on the streets, at the top of the next page, there are some cameos on this page. Do you know?
Oh boy.
There are 2 big cameos here. Now,
are they real people cameos or are they character cameos?
They're character of the DC cameos. So there's this. They're on this page, on page 250 of the trade. I don't know what page it is in the issue. There's a redheaded woman that is being interviewed by a man named Jack Ryder. He's in a green suit.
He's a Batman bad guy.
He's sort of a bad guy. He's an anti-hero.
He has, in the animated series, he's yellow, and he has green hair.
He's always yellow. He's the creeper.
There you go. I couldn't pull the name. Yes.
Because his regular job is he's a newspaper reporter.
Yes.
And then in the next panel, there's a man with a pipe. Do you know who that is?
Dr. Will Magnus, he created the Metal Man.
That is correct. So I did
know. Look at that.
Well, they kind of skate by them, so I kind of wanted to just point them out because it's interesting that they treat them as just like, oh, they're just normal citizens. But you're like, no, these are major DC characters. We get to see on the next page a little bit of Clark Kent reporting, which again, this is when Clark Kent was a television news reporter, and we get the most obscure cameo, I think, of all of Crisis on Infinite Earths on this page. Now, Ashley, I want you to look at this page, the page where Clark Kent is reporting. There's a bunch of soldiers and Sergeant Rock, stuff like that. Now, remember, Peter Parker has already been in this, and I think this cameo is more obscure than Peter Parker. Can you spot the most obscure DC cameo on this page?
Well, it either has to be the guy with the red beard, or it has to be this probably African-American gentleman down in the corner?
Incorrect.
Then no, I cannot.
In the panel, there is a panel of a child in a red sweater watching Clark Kent on television. And
is that the Family Circus kid?
On the background, there is a picture frame.
Yes.
Of 2 children.
Yes.
Back there. Those children are Sugar and Spike.
I don't even know who those characters are. I know they're DC Comics characters.
They are Gold Age DC characters. Specifically, they are Sugar Plum and Cecil Spike Wilson, who possess the ability to communicate with each other via baby talk and other infants, but not to adults. Now, you might be wondering, well, if they're in the picture frames, who the hell is the kid in the chair watching television? Well, the kid is Bernie the Brain. He is a child genius whose inventions enlivened many a Sugar and Spike story. That is an obscure cameo for Crisis on Infinite Earths, for God's sake.
On the one hand, I respect it. On the other hand, I hate it. Cool, I guess.
I just wanted to point it out. When I was reading this issue, I was like, there is no way that picture frame is not on purpose.
You know, do they look like Sugar and Spike?
Yes, they do. That's Sugar and Spike.
Cool.
Yeah.
I've never read a Sugar and Spike comic, so I don't even know. Like, to me, truly, they look like the Family Circus kids.
So, fun fact, they've really kind of disappeared in the DC universe, but they did show up in a Jeff Johns Teen Titans issue.
I know that, yeah.
One of the Teen Titans are babysitting kids, and they're babysitting Sugar and Spike, but they don't call themselves Sugar and Spike. They also popped up again in the New 52. Keith Giffen did like a funny little thing with them. So people, like, they still show up, but people really don't want to write them anymore, because they are kind of Family Circus characters.
Well, also
the Richie Rich
the
characters.
Idea that, like, they can talk and baby talk to each other, but not to adults, you're like, okay, so, like, it's not particularly super in keeping with the DC brand.
Yes.
That's all.
All right, so Ashley, what do you want to talk about next?
What do I want to talk about next?
Lead the way.
I love that we go to the UN on the next page. This is a tried and true superhero trope. We do it. The DCEU did it.
Yep. Young Justice is doing it.
Yeah.
In season 3.
Yeah, and I just love the idea that anyone thought it was a good idea for Pariah to speak in public.
Yeah, he's not the guy I would put up there.
He's
like,
constantly weeping and tearing his hair like he's like an Italian grandmother.
I imagine him like an old Shakespearean actor. Like he's like,
yeah. I think it's the cape. Also, Lady Quark shows up at the bottom of the same page with the UN sequence. I constantly forget that she exists.
You know who she's talking to, right?
And then she keeps Lois Lane.
No, Wonder Woman.
Oh. You're right.
It's Wonder Woman's Diane Prince. Yeah.
But she looks like Lois in this film.
Yes.
I always forget that Lady Quark exists, and then she just keeps showing up in the next page. And then, of course, Brainiac shows up.
Well, we get to
ruin the day.
Brainiac and Luthor are basically like, yo, we're going to take over all 5 of these worlds, surrender us, or we'll just destroy you.
It's very, because they appear sort of in illusion. To me, it's very Wizard of Oz, surrender Dorothy.
Yep.
Like it's very silly in that way. At the bottom of the next page, the bottom page with Luthor in it, there's a Superman sequence.
Oh, so good.
That I think is really, 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 really stunning.
Okay, so there's a lot of things where eventually we come to heroes try to bust through the wall, but it comes to the scene where Wally West is like in his boxers, sitting on a bed.
Can I talk about something really quick right before that?
Sure.
At the top of the page where we get Cheesecake Wally, which I'm 1,000% here for, I love that we get Earth 2 Superman and Power Girl reunited. It's a nice nod back to Superman and Supergirl's relationship that obviously ended a couple issues ago, and we've seen Power Girl struggle with her place in Crisis, so I just like that moment.
Well, because she's his Supergirl.
Yeah, she is.
Whereas, because we lost Earth 1 Supergirl.
But so I like that even though we've had that tragedy of the Earth 1 characters, the Earth 2 characters are still working together.
Sure. So we get Cheesecake Wally, and we get Jay Garrick and Lila showing up to...
Lila looks awesome.
Be like, hey, come back. Because this is during the period where Wally West has retired from the Teen Titans. Something that we saw Young Justice did as well.
Yes.
Where they retired. And so they go to the classic, the Cosmic Treadmill, which is, a classic Flash storyline thing. It is a treadmill that allows you to travel the multiverse and the, of course...
Time space
continuum,
because it's not
whatever.
The Speed Force yet.
I have a prediction about that, and we will move on.
We also get a real brief glimpse at classic Roy Harper in my favorite costume.
Oh, the Speedy costume.
Yeah.
We kind of get a bunch of characters. Yeah, a bunch of characters. Just like there's
the Metal Men show up for a second.
I mean, the rest of the issue, to be honest with you, we could kind of almost go through because it's just a big old fight.
It's a big fight. It's also a big clip show.
Yep.
Like, we're like, oh, well, we haven't seen the Metal Men yet, so here's the Metal Men, okay.
And to be honest with you, it's just a bunch of different fights of all the ways through.
Okay.
The Joker shows up until it's revealed that Simon...
I hate Simon.
Kills Brainiac. All right, Ashley, who is Simon?
Simon is a super intelligent telepath whom... telekinetic illusionist.
He's in Young Justice season 3, if you're confused about it.
I can't remember if at this time, but he's usually portrayed as quite young. Here,
Teen Titans villain,
here just the way they draw him, he looks a little older. I think they might have de-aged him later on.
Sure.
But he's most iconic because the top of his head is cut open and you can see his brain through a dome. I just think he's one of the most truly frightening looking villains. So every time he shows up, I hate him because I find him very effective.
I think the interesting thing about this is because Luthor is counting on Brainiac to be a big ally, and now he doesn't have Brainiac. I don't quite remember because I'm trying not to read too far ahead in this. I believe that Marvel fans picking this moment because it's the idea to give Luthor the all hope is lost moment.
Yes,
where he's counting on Brainiac, and now he doesn't have Brainiac because some stupid kid with a brain out of his head decided to screw around.
Yeah, but that also... It's a smart way, because Simon is as powerful as he is, to dead stop the villains from just ravaging the world because we have 3 more issues to get through.
Yes, and that's the end of the issue.
Yeah.
So now we gotta say goodbye to Goodbye Brainiac. That's it. All right, we have no more Crisis Mail, so we're gonna overall thoughts on the issue and then our ratings of 1 to 5 worlds, 5 being the best. Ashley, what would you give this issue? Issue 9.
Issue 9 is a good issue of comic. I think there's a lot of cool fights. I think there's some great art. There's some fun cameos. In terms of the larger picture of what Crisis on Infinite Earths is. I don't find it as impactful as some of the other things that we've done. It does feel a little bit like a clip show. And even the information that we're given doesn't feel as necessary because it is more things, like you mentioned, the all hope is lost. We're not getting told a lot of things that we need to know. It's still probably one of the, you know, best comics
still good
ever written. It's still totally a good time. But in the wake of the previous 2 issues that were so powerful, I'm going to give it a 4.
Yep.
I just think it's pumping the brakes a little bit. That's all. How about you?
I agree. I think that if this was a Netflix streaming show, this is the episode that we would be like, what are they doing?
Yeah.
Like, it does. I feel like we're stretching a bit here. Now, I understand why you write this issue. So that's why I still think it's a good issue. Because, again, at this time, and even now, this is a comic book about thousands of characters. And sometimes you would need an issue just to be like, well, we got to check in on some people. We got to check in because it can't just all be action. It can't. It's impossible. And this is a chess piece of a story. And the fact, to be honest with you, okay, we are at issue 9, and the fact that this story makes any goddamn sense is a miracle.
It's a feat, yeah, for sure.
So kudos to Marv Wolfman. But I agree, compared.
Yeah.
It's not a payoff issue. This is a setup issue. I'm gonna give it a 4 as well. Going with the villains is interesting, and I don't know if it succeeds. All right, so that's it, talking about Crisis on Infinite Earths. Issue 10 of Crisis on Infinite Earths. Thought I was going about Crisis on Infinite Time. And giant hands are pushing through reality. Here it is, right there. It's the hand of creation. As we decided earlier in this video series, the hand of Marv Wolfman. But we actually learned whose hand it is in this issue. It's called Death at the Dawn of Time. It was written and edited by Marv Wolfman, penciled by George Perez, with inks by Jerry Ordway, lettered by John Costanza, colored by Anthony Tolan, and is published on January of 1986. They didn't quite make the anniversary year of DC Comics, 1985. They're a little bit over the edge. They're gonna have 3 issues not in the anniversary year.
How come the big 2 can't get their books out on time?
Not even in 1985 could they do it.
Certainly not today.
All right, Ashley, let's talk about this cover. Let's hear some thoughts on this.
It sure does have the Spectre looking completely naked on it.
I mean, the Spectre basically is completely naked.
I know, but they've just shaded in where his little Speedo usually is.
He has a Speedo. In Kingdom Come, actually, the Alex Ross series, he doesn't have a Speedo at all. He's a Spectrian in the wind, as some would say.
Yeah, I like less Spectre in my life generally. What I think is interesting about this cover is the negative space is left white, which is something that's pretty uncommon.
Because it's the edge of time.
In comic book pages,
the
right?
Edge of reality.
We're sort of evoking the fact that we're breaking away from our constraints, and I think it's interesting. And then it's always fun to be like, who is that on this cover? Is that Blue Beetle right there? Or is that just a little blobby guy?
You don't know who the most interesting person on this cover is?
Lady Quark?
No, Starro the Conqueror in the top left-hand corner, who really hasn't appeared in this series at all.
Robin of Earth 2 is on this cover.
But he's just sort of decided to be like, I'm going to show up. That's my Starro voice.
Well, Starro is an iconic
Don't forget me.
figure. That's honestly, Cullen.
I want to be part of this event.
Cullen Bunn for Starro. Always.
I love this cover because...
First enemy of the Justice League, that's what I meant
Also,
to
you
say.
should note, Batman in the center of this cover looks like his back has just been broken.
That's heralding something to come.
I think this cover, for me, this is like one of those covers when I think of Crisis on Infinite Earths, like cosmic-y nonsense, characters going against each other. This is a cover I think of.
Who's this?
That is the Phantom Bomb of the Freedom Fighters, Uncle Sam the Freedom.
He just looks like a spaceman.
He's talking about the little white man down to the left side, the right side of the leg of the Antimatter. Let's move on. You know, of course, we're dealing with the remnants of the last issue, which we kind of thought was a weird cliffhanger where Brainiac is killed by Simon, but don't worry, it's undone in 3 pages.
Truly, nothing is more gratifying than watching Simon's skull get blasted through because I hate this character. I hate him. Jason, what do you think about the narrative device that we have running along the bottom of all these pages of the monitor tapes, where we're basically doing 2 stories for the price of 1?
Okay, 1, I have two. I told you, this is a crisis of infinite times, guys. We're gonna get numbers all over. We're at the edge of time, reality is breaking down, and numbers aren't gonna make sense anymore. I think in this issue 75 of Crisis on Infinite Earths, I think this is an interesting narrative device. It's a horizontal panel across all the pages
So
of this book.
effectively a newspaper strip.
Yes, called the Monitor Tapes. It's a separate story, not generally a feature of cosmic-y comic book events. You usually don't do an interesting narrative device in your thing because cosmic comic book events are hard enough to understand as they are. Now, technically, this is the first comic book event of all time, sort of. Shazam and the Monster Society of Evil, some might argue, is the other one. I like it because when you get to the end of it, you realize how it connects into the story. That it connects kind of into the beginning of Crisis on Infinite Earths. And since we're getting to the end of Crisis on Infinite Earths, I kind of like it. What do you think about it?
I hate it.
Ooh, why?
Because it makes it hard to read. Because there's a lot going on in this already, and then to have to either ignore it completely
Yes.
and then decide to read, like, I refuse to read this twice. So to me, like, that's a bad experience if basically you're asking me to read this twice.
I
But
read
then,
it page by page.
So did I, but then all this stuff happens. Like, if I hadn't been making notes, I don't know if I would have retained any of it. But a lot of really interesting things are unveiled in here, like Thanagar was wiped out. There was originally a team called the Planeteers that they were wiped out. There's a bunch of other things that happened, but are specifically only talked about or only addressed here because they sort of happen off panel to the rest of the event.
I have a theory about these Monitor Tape panels.
What is that?
My theory is that we're 10 issues in. The book is slightly late, by whether because of George Perez, whether because of the inkers, whether because of DC scheduling. I don't honestly know, but I kind of think this is Marv Wolfman getting a little bored with this book.
Interesting.
And I think the Monitor Tapes is kind of what's exciting. I think this is how he made it exciting for him.
I mean, I can admire the fact that they're playing with structure and they're playing with layout in a way that we've never seen before, but I found it to be an unenjoyable reading experience.
Interesting.
I would have rather seen this condensed into like a 4-page backup
Oh, interesting.
than presented like this.
Again, I like the chutzpah of trying to do it in the middle of a giant comic book
also
event.
Swamp Thing appears in one of these
Yep.
little black and white stories.
But not Starro.
No, unfortunately.
So, okay, let's talk about...
Anthro?
No.
Jason loves
Stop
Anthro.
interrupting me.
Back. He's back on page 3.
Yeah, I don't
There
care
he
about Anthro.
is.
Robot Man of the Doom Patrol shows up here.
Yeah, there's a lot of actually DC TV cameos. We have Swamp Thing, we have the Doom Patrol, and we specifically see Negative Man, maybe it's Negative Woman, and then Hawk and Dove also appear later on because one of them's gonna bite the dust in 2 more issues.
Yes, okay, so let's talk about this. There's a lot of fighty-fighty. Billy Batson turns into Shazam, and then there's a cool panel where several pages in where the Spectre appears through the planets and on the other side of, and he basically tells every single world to stop. I really like this because the Spectre is a big person, cosmic-y in the DC universe, and this is, to be honest with you, it's been a little weird that he's been kind of sitting out this entire event. And I like the idea that the Spectre is, it's a bad comparison, sort of DC's Galactus. Sort of, except the good Galactus, that like, when the Spectre shows up, stuff's going down.
I guess for me, I understand why you would want to leave the Spectre out of this event because the Spectre is so tied to a religious construct. And we're dealing more with like science fiction and godhead figures and space and time. And so to have the Spectre show up, I was a little like, oh, that's weird.
To be honest with you, I think the reason why he's left out, it has nothing to do with the religious context. It has everything to do with he is the only other character that is powerful enough that if he wanted to snap his fingers, the Anti-Monitor would go out of existence.
Yeah.
He can solve the story in a beat. So I think that's the reason why he hasn't appeared for 10 issues.
But the art, specifically the inking, is really, really stunning around his face every time he kind of appears in a close-up.
Now
It's really gorgeous.
We got to talk about here, because on the second page the Spectre shows up, there's this panel where we see like the Time Trapper, and then we see a bunch of people in some green shirts and some red collars. Ashley, do you know who these people are?
Those are Rip Hunter and the Time Master.
Yes, the Time Masters. Rip Hunter, the Time Master show up. I think it's really cool because Rip Hunter is pretty awesome. I'm gonna be honest here, Ashley. There's a lot in this issue. Not a lot This is another one of the famous setup issues. I do like, though, a couple pages in that we get to say Earth to Lois
I knew you were gonna bring up Lois.
and Earth to Superman say goodbye for what they think is going to be the final time. This is
Well,
the OG
spoiler
Lois
alert.
and the OG Superman.
They're right.
Yes, this will be the last time they ever say goodbye to each other.
We also, Superboy Prime also shows up, which is really fun.
Who hasn't been a big part of this series up to
Then
this
we're
point.
not going to see him for about 30 years. But what I like about Superboy Prime here is because he's supposed to be young Superman, he just kind of looks like skinny Superman. Like, the way they draw him, I think, is very funny because later on, when Connor gets introduced, they really go out of their way, even if it's just the black t-shirt design, to visually differentiate. Like, when the three Supermanses are all just standing around, except for the Reed Richards hair, sometimes it's tough to tell them apart.
Now, let's talk about, Ashley, there's a character in here before they go off on their big mission with the Spectre. Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam and the Freedom Fighters
have a note about
is
him.
a classic DC character storyline. But yes, Uncle Sam, the representation of I Want You and the American Army, is a character in the DC universe, and he gives like what I think is a really great speech that I said, but for our freedom to think as we do, to act as we do, to be what we want, that may sound kind of corny to some of you, and maybe it is, but it's what freedom's all about.
Yeah.
I thought the speech was great. What do you think, as a Canadian reading the story, that Uncle Sam gets this moment? And also, Uncle Sam is a character in the DC universe. What are your thoughts on this as a non-American?
Yeah, I don't know. It always feels weird. Like, it's kind of the same feelings that I had about Captain America for a long time. And I was like, I mean, I know, like, granted, it was created in America by Americans, but like, wow, you really sure are proud that you made this happen. I don't like this character. I have no use for this character, honestly. I think this is a great speech. I think it's a great moment. I think there's a reason why Uncle Sam doesn't appear much in comics anymore. But I also, by the same token, think there's no problem with having superheroes that are representative of your country. There's been lots of really interesting storylines that explore that, including Justice League International. If you would like to see Justice League International Club, if you would like Blah Ha Ha Club, you'd let us know down in the comments. I love, right after his speech, though, that the Metal Men show up. I know you are a big fan of the Metal Men. In their weird Faraday cage solution to this problem, which ultimately proves ineffective. But I just think that they actually are used in a very visually interesting way here. And you're like, oh, they are cool. They're not just kind of these weird tiny robots.
We have to talk about something that is very important in this book, and I think is really cool in this book.
What is that?
The villains in some of the heroes go back to the dawn of time. And they go back to the dawn of time, and they go specifically 10 million years ago to the fateful day that Krona, one of the original Guardians of the Universe, is trying to witness creation. The moment, if you remember, that the multiverse was created. The idea that Krona's seen the hand of creation is what splits off the universes. And they go there to try to prevent Krona from doing this. But if you remember, Krona is a guardian of the universe. He's one powerful mofo, and he basically slaps them all aside.
Yeah, right. Actually, right. The scene right before that, we actually see the death of Tula, which is
I forgot to mention the death of Aqua.
which is sort of heralding everybody's sadness coming. I also just want to point out on page 19 of this issue, there's a tiny little pink alien, and I don't know who he is or what he's from, but I am obsessed with him, and I hope he's on the TV show.
Well, actually, that little pink guy is a guy named Krill. He sort of looks like Porky Pig, but he's not. Actually, I think he looks like Qbert.
Yeah, he does.
But he's a supporting character from the old DC Showcase series, specifically the Space Rangers storylines. So it's kind of like Marv Wolfman just pulling out a little cameo, kind of like Sugar and Spice. Okay, so we got to talk about here the pivotal moment. So Krona, we're back at the dawn of time. The Anti-Monitor is reaching through the positive universe.
The charge against them led by 50 of their greatest heroes in the DC universe. A
And
statement I find suspect.
The Anti-Monitor is the hand of creation. I think that is one of the best retcons in DC Universe. In the entirety of DC Comics, I think that is so smart, that is genius, that the idea that this hand that Krona is briefly seen is the Anti-Monitor trying to stop creation. It's not the hand of creation, it's the hand of destruction. And then we get a giant arm wrestling scene because the Spectre like clasps his hand and is like, you're not gonna get through there, brr.
You don't find that too paradoxical?
How so?
Well, that the Anti-Monitor, the thing they're trying to destroy, goes back to the dawn of creation, and his hand is seen as the hand of creation, which launches the multiverse in the first place, and he's trying to destroy the multiverse, and he'll always go back, and he'll always be the hand, and then
well, because now he's going to become the hand. He will be the hand of creation, because this event, as we see 2 pages down the road, as they do this giant,
it's beautiful, really stunning.
This giant, all the magicians are peering through. They're giving all the power to the Spectre.
Yeah, Zatanna actually gets a really good moment here.
Yes, and the Spectre pushes through, but what happens is that now his hand does become the hand of creation. It becomes the hand of creation of the single universe. No, because this is a big DC cosmic event about the multiverse, and we've had so many scenes set on the edge of reality or the edge of Neversphere that Paradox, we're way past that. I mean, we just had Quirrell in there. That little cute Krill, excuse me.
Quirrell's Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Also owned by WB, so I mean, he could have been there.
And Quirrell's in there. Look for him. We're way past goofy comic book logic, so I don't mind it.
Okay.
So, but literally the last panel in this entire issue is shards of glass.
Yeah, which is interesting because if you have this version, there's no cover before you go into issue 11, so if you're like me, you just keep reading, and then you realize halfway through that the numbers on the bottom of the page have changed.
Yes. All right, so that's it for this issue, but first we gotta say goodbye. We gotta say goodbye, Aqua Girl.
Tula.
Yep. And we gotta say goodbye, universe, or actually goodbye, multiverse. All right, so let's go to our rating on this issue. Ashley, based on a scale of 5 Earths, 5 being the best, 0 Earths being the worst. What do you give this issue?
I think this issue is kind of slow starting, and I think it's kind of difficult to read. Even though these are comics of a certain time and they are written in a certain style, I haven't found them to be as slow as this one was getting started. I started this, walked away from it, and then had to come back to it. But you know, we're still reading a masterclass. There's still beautiful art. So I'm gonna give it a 4. It's not my favorite issue in Crisis on Infinite Earths, and because I know what happens in the next issue, I was much more excited to get to that than what we had here. So 4 out of 5. How about you?
I think this is definitely an issue that shows the length of this series. This series is 12 issues, and I think this issue is maybe one that I'm like, you could have maybe made this 11 issues. I get the idea that you wanted an issue for every month of the anniversary year, but you're already past the anniversary year. Marvel opened in 1985. Get to it. So this is a lot of setup. I love Krona. I love the idea we're going back to the Hand of Creation because I've always loved that being a part of the DC universe. I just kind of felt like maybe that should have been the whole issue, because the stuff with Brainiac and whatever, like that was just clearly he needed a cliffhanger, and there's a bunch of other stuff where I'm like, I don't know if you needed that. Like, just get me to the dawn of time. Let's go. So I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5. I don't think it's a perfect issue. Really quick, for the reading order, we did this a little bit out of order here. Here are some other stories that tie into Crisis on Infinite Earths. So if you're reading Crisis on Infinite Earths issue number 10, the next issue that you need to read is Crisis on Infinite Earths number 11. It's a pretty easy one this time. It's pretty easy to think about that. So there you go. Thank you so much for watching this video. We hope we explained Crisis on Infinite Earths issue 10 well enough for you, and we hope that we opened your brain noggin when you're watching those episodes. Thank you for all the support on Patreon. It's because of you guys that we can talk about Crisis Club, specifically Crisis on Infinite Earths issue 10. Some future worlds died, Krona looked at some hands, and we watched a giant arm wrestling tournament between the Spectre
for like
and the
5 pages.
It's like, let's arm wrestle right now, Ashley.
Okay.
I'm Jason Inman.
I'm Ashley Victoria Roberts.
Crisis Club!